Okay, so it is March 2nd, 2021. They're doing their little update. I just want you to hear this, people. But before I go on, anyway, let's listen to what she has to say, okay? It's going to be short. Hold on. Oops. I have to turn on the video.
AstraZeneca and perhaps soon the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as well. We may be able to move that up. So I was probably slightly over-optimistic, but we are looking at July. And yes, we know from immunology.
They know from immunology, okay?
That the booster dose. The timing of the booster dose can sometimes confer additional benefit in terms of the strength of the immune response, particularly the cell-mediated immunity, and have a prolonged benefit in how long the response lasts.
Okay, you heard that, right?
And we know this from other vaccine programs, particularly
like measles, mumps, you know, that kind of stuff, right?
Hepatitis programs, hepatitis A and hepatitis B, when we find that if you increase the interval, if you give it...
This is with your standard vaccines that they've been manufacturing for years and years and years and years and years and years under the one technology that takes years of trials and experiments and before it's approved through Health Canada and those kind of places, right? Okay, that's completely different than what we're dealing with. Just keep listening.
Too soon. We know this from immunology and from vaccine science for a long time. If you give it too soon, your body's immune system just doesn't recognize it as something new. It's just a little bit of a bump, a stimulus of the first dose that you got. But if you extend it a period of time that's up to 6 months, for some things it can be as long as a year, but 6 months is a usual one, then you can get a more durable and longer lasting protection. We don't know that for sure yet.
We don't know that for sure yet with the mRNA vaccination, which is being used as a vaccine but hasn't been turned into a vaccination yet until they make it a vaccination, people.
These are all new vaccines.
These are all new vaccines. What makes them so new compared to what they've been doing for years and years and years and years and years and years, and list those vaccines as vaccines? It's because they're using a different kind of technology now with chemicals, that's why. And gene editing.
And we've only been monitoring them for now close to 5 months.
And we've only been monitoring these new vaccines, which technically don't fall under the category of a vaccine based on what they already know with what they've been doing with vaccines.
For some of the vaccines from the clinical trials, etc. So those are things that we still have yet to determine, and those are the things that we're going to...
She just brushes it off, people, like it's nothing. She knows it's experimental drugs. She knows it. And she's just blowing it off like it's nothing. And you know what they're doing? They're skipping the queue, right? Making their own rules, right? Because that's what the government, the federal government did. They made it so that provinces can decide how they're going to distribute these analogs, okay? Based under technology that's never been successful, right? But they want to move it along, you know what I'm saying? Especially now with the CRISPR technology involved, right? And, oh, what was I going to say, people? I just get so flabbergasted with this. Oh, yeah. I'm going to keep this video short, okay? I'm listening, I'm cleaning, I'm doing stuff, and I just had a coffee and I'm listening in between, right? I'm going to come back. I'll probably add a little more to this, okay? But instead of, okay, let's say, for example, our current immunization program, you know, they like you to have like a tetanus shot, for example. You should technically upgrade your tetanus shot every 10 years. That's what I've heard. Myself, I don't know when was the last time I had a tetanus shot. I know I stepped on a rusty nail in the fall out in the back, right? But outside of that, you know, when you first start these things with immunization, you know, they have 2 months, 2 months, 6 months, I don't know, 12, 18 months, and then it goes on to 5 years, then it goes on to 12 years, right, for these boosters, okay? But they're getting kind of like overzealot about it now, where they're over-stimulating the immune system of children, okay? So, but there's a standard pattern. Everybody across the continent pretty much follows the same protocol. This is what I'm trying to say. Okay? Whereas with this mRNA, our federal governments made it where state and provincial or territories, right, can decide for themselves how they're going to distribute these analogs as they're being shipped into the state, province, or into the territory. And it's for the legislative house of assemblies within those, right, areas, regions, jurisdictions, whatever, to decide who gets it first, right? Which right there is a red flag, because it tells you that they're what is it, data mining? They're data mining. They're data mining, and they're doing it in the undercurrent, in the underbelly of the beast, through propaganda spin, okay, that isn't being completely truthful, right? Because over there, you know, she brought up, for example, the United States, because I guess some senator or somebody in the Ontario, Toronto, or wherever was criticizing BC for trying to extend the booster to 4 months versus within 3 weeks, right? Whereas in the United States, you get your shot, and then within 3 weeks or so, you get the booster, right? And she's going on about how she's trying to justify the decisions that they've made in BC to extend it to 4 months. And the reason that they're justifying it for that purpose, people, okay, and this is why I'm doing this video, is because they want everyone to get it as fast as they can, right? Because limited supplies are coming in. So, you know, if you have to get it in 3 weeks, right, that means more people are going to have to wait for it, okay? Which there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to want it, because not everybody is fucking stupid around here, okay? And the ones that are taking, many of them are going to be taking it under duress, for the fact that they're not going to want to lose their jobs and end up freaking homeless. Okay? And then be targeted on the streets. It's one thing being targeted in your home and in grocery stores and post offices and places like that, right? But it's another thing when you're homeless and being targeted out on the street. So people are cornered into taking this, okay? And before they get wind or hear about the deaths, because she's not reporting any adverse effects in relation to deaths after the COVID shot, okay? She's just saying people are continuing to die because of COVID. As we keep having cases, so-called cases, documented. So for all these cases that are being documented, we sure in the hell got a lot of sick people in the province of British Columbia, Canada. Seriously. Okay? Because this binary individual basically treats everybody like they're freaking sewage, and they're like highly toxic to be around. Right? Got to put them in quarantine. It's like sewage, you know. You don't want sewage around you. You want it over there in quarantine. Right? You know what I'm saying? Well, that's how they're treating human beings, people. Okay? And before too many get the cold feet to say, and or maybe grow some gills or grow some hair where it actually counts, right? You know, let the balls hang low, swing to and fro, right? You know, pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? Find out that they actually have a voice, right? Before too many start doing that, okay? They're going to make it so that they're going to extend that 3-week period to 4 months so they can target. This is what they're doing. They're taking that 2.5 months, right? That's what, 9 weeks or so? No, 8, yeah, 4 and 4. Okay, about 9 weeks out of 4 months, right? 4 months. No, it's more than that. It's 4, 8, 12, 13. They're taking 13 weeks, people. Okay, instead of 3 weeks, they're taking an extra 13 weeks. Okay, 4 months is 16 weeks approximately. Okay, so they're taking 13 weeks to buy them time to target people. Yep. Based on an experiment to data mine data, like to data mining data. Because ultimately, all these different states and provinces and the Yukon territories and places like that, they're taking all their information, their data that they've collected for their jurisdiction, and they're sending it to a main computer. Okay, that's what they're doing, people. And then through that main computer, they're tweaking the books. They're tweaking the chemistry. But they've already got the general public on lockdown in terms of there's going to be another one within 6 months for the ones that have it right now or are getting it within the next 6 months to a year will be requested to have another one because whatever the hell it was that they had, right, they're going to say, oh, it's not effective anymore because we've got the new variant, right? And now you're on the system, and if you want to keep your job, they're just going to repeat the cycle all over again. If you want to keep your job, right, if you don't want to be harassed, right, you have to be socially responsible, right, to everybody else around you except yourself, right, because you yourself have no rights now, right, you never have, right, but we're just reminding you that you really don't now, right, they're on the system, they're going to be required to take them. The second round, not the first round will be done, right, and they're not only are they data mining, but they're mining for people to get that first shot in them so they're on the roster, okay, and they can't escape. They can't say no. Because if they come to you and they say, this is it, it's your turn, right, and you say no, they're going to like gaslight you and say, well, how dare you? You know, we've got other people waiting 4 months for their second dose when we could have gave it to them 3 weeks after the fact as to what the manufacturer suggested. But because the federal government gave us the right to extend it so that we can help you and save your life, even though we're basically terrorizing you to death, right? Okay? So, do you see what I'm saying? Like, how just playing with words here in terms of they are not extending it 4 months from a 3-week period to a 4-month period for a second dose based on science, as she's trying to say, because there is no science documented, although this binary individual is saying that this is what the UK does, okay? And based on what the UK does, somehow it makes it right, okay? I tried to Google someplace in the UK the information in terms of the side effects. They don't provide that information to the public, people. So it's very one-sided and lopsided in terms of how many people are actually dying after their freaking shot. Okay? And I came across also another video yesterday where a fellow was actually documenting how what I showed you, where in the CDC in the United States, right? They're purging certain files. They're burying them. They're removing them completely off the server. Okay? Because they don't want the true numbers to get out even at 1%. All right? Like, we're dealing with some really crooked people here. Okay? So, they're not doing it to help people. Oh, we want more people to get it, and so that we can get on with society and be normal, as if, because within 8 months they're going to come with a new one, and they're going to start at the front of the fucking line all over again. Okay, this binary individual is already pointing in that direction through her lip service, okay? And this extending it for 4 months just allows the government to gang stalk, target, right? By any means necessary, right? More in the community to get them. It's like a fishing net, right? To get them hooked into the fishing net, to reel them in, to guarantee that they're going to be there and they're not going to escape. Okay? And she's gambling as they have been gambling from the very beginning, because you heard this binary individual specifically say that they don't know what they're really doing in terms of it's a new vaccine. No, this is not a vaccine, people. This is an analog being introduced into the body through a needle, like as if fentanyl was being introduced into the body with a needle. And it travels into your lymph nodes, and then from there it disperses, but ultimately it goes into your head, and it tells your head what to do in terms of, right? Antibodies and immune and all this crap, right? You know, right? It's not, the hand doesn't move simply because the hand can move. The hand moves because my brain is thinking to make it move, right? Right? It's my brain that tells my body to create antibodies. It's my brain that triggers something in and goes, and it all interacts with each other. They're interrupting the natural function of the body. That's beyond antigen coming into your system, where your system reacts to it in a more natural sense. What they're doing is not natural. This is why they're not giving you the animal studies around mRNA. If this is such great, grand technology, why don't they talk about all the trials and errors that they've had for the last 20 years or more around this technology? And they're not going to tell you, people, right? Because they don't want you to know the truth. They're just going to feed you a story, right? Well, it's a vaccine, and we know all about how the immune system works based on the vaccines that we've been doing, and this is how we normally do it because that's what we've been doing all these years. Because immunology, we understand that because we've been giving out vaccines for whooping cough and vaccines for freaking this and right, but now we're in a new fucking era, and we don't really know what we're doing, people. No, but that's okay. We're allowed to do what we want because the federal government says so, because actually what we're really doing, and we're just not telling you, is we're data mining. Well, not only are we data mining, though, we're making it so that we can literally target people and gang stalk them, people, and terrorize and fucking torture them, people, threaten them, people, abuse them, people, kill them, people, right? And then just simply said it was COVID. People are still dying in the old folks' homes with COVID. But yet this binary individual is going on about how the vaccine has basically solved their fucking problem. Even though they got an outbreak over here and an outbreak over there. But that's okay. They're going to finish inoculating all of those old people, and then they're going into the private homes, and they're going after the 80-year-olds. If I find out that I will find out, people, if my landlords, one of them, doesn't matter which one, or both, God forbid, if they die after they take the shot, if you think I'm being loud now, oh my God, it will never fucking end. It will never fucking end. Okay? Never fucking end. But you see, that's the thing, though. We're never going to be told the truth. You'd have to hear it from the horse's mouth before it could ever happen in terms of finding out who died. Okay? You'd have to hear it from somebody like me that's being shadow banned on YouTube with really important information, and I get 26 views. Yeah, okay. But you got somebody in there fucking ripping their hair out from their fucking armpits and, or stupid shit, or they're fucking fighting over stupid shit and, just gossiping and, or just stupid shit, people, just stupid shit. Those people, they get, YouTube, their videos looking good, right? There's no lags, right? It's just business as usual. With me, no. I'm warning people. I'm telling you, they're not doing it because they want to make it so that everybody can have it. They're going to come after you and they're going to try and make you have it. Well, we've got people on hold waiting for their second dose because of you. You better take it now, because if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And if you still don't, after we try and gaslight you and make you feel bad for not fucking taking our kindness, right? They're going to threaten you, people. Right? They're going to come after you and try and hurt you where you're the weakest. And it's not that you're weak. It's just they can do what they want. These people, I told you, these individuals, they're ruthless. Okay? Anyway, I'll be back. Okay, I turn this back on after I turn it off, and you gotta listen. You gotta listen to what she's saying, because she's telling you they don't know what they're doing. They're just data mining as they're gang stalking.
We don't know that for sure yet. These are all new vaccines, and we've only been monitoring them for now close to 5 months for some of the vaccines from the clinical trials, etc. So those are things that we still have yet to determine, and those are the things that we're going to be watching, and we're going to be watching what happens. There's a
Do you see that? Do you see that? They are junking up people. They are junking up people, and they're just watching and waiting to see what happens, right? But they're taking down notes, right? They're watching for serious this and serious that, but they're not reporting on it, right?
mix and match study as we...
They're doing their mix and match study. She says it right there, black and white. They're doing their mix and match study.
We call it going on in the UK, so starting with one vaccine, looking at different dose intervals, giving a second dose with a different vaccine to see if...
Like, what the fuck is this, people? Like, who does this? Like, do people listen to what comes out of this individual's mouth?
Any one of those combination gives you longer lasting and better...
But they're watching and seeing and they're taking notes. Yeah, no, she can't. She's just jumping with the words.
Protection. So all of this stuff is new, and we're going to...
But it's all new. But yet she's an expert on it. She knows exactly what's happening, even though prior to saying that she knew what was happening, she said we're watching to see what happens. Do you see the play on words?
We'll be learning as we go over the...
And we're learning as we go along. Okay, but yet you know but yet you in the other breath, you're saying you know what you're doing. And therefore, because you know what you're doing, we're forced into taking whatever it is that you're fucking doing.
The next few months, but we are confident in the decisions we've made right now, and we're going to know a whole lot more by the time we get to June and July.
And we're going to know, yeah, because they're data mining people as they're fucking gang stalking, terrorizing, and harassing people. And targeting people. and scaring the freaking living jeebies out of people if they're not fucking having heart attacks. Okay? Not to mention for the ones that are already maybe taken their own life, or maybe had their life taken and their death was covered up.
Next question is from Justine Hunter, Globe and Mail.
Okay. I'm eating cheese, so we're going to listen to this. Okay, people? Hold on.
Hi, Dr. Henry. I'm just wondering, you had said yesterday that essential workers could opt for the AstraZeneca vaccine if they wanted to get vaccinated sooner. I'm wondering about vaccine choice for the general public. When it gets to, phase 3 and 4, will members of the general public, if they're, say, offered AstraZeneca, could they decline it and wait longer to get the other two, or what is the level of choice available to the general public?
So let me be very clear. The vaccine you are offered is the best vaccine. All of the vaccines that we have available for use in Canada are safe and effective, and a single dose provides good protection from all of them. And we will be continuing to monitor that. The difference that we have,
And we'll be continuing to monitor that, but if you go forward into my video, you hear otherwise.
They built the foundational part of our immunization program on the two vaccines that we had the most of early on, and that's the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. So if you are in our mass clinics, those are the vaccines we'll be using. And no, you won't have a choice between Pfizer and Moderna. You'll take the one that's there in front.
You heard that. You won't have a choice. She said it several times already, people. Okay? Right? You won't have a choice. They're going to give you what they want to give you. Right? And you don't know what's in it.
Front of you, and I encourage everybody to take the one that's there in front of you. When it
Take the one that's there in front of you. I encourage you to do it.
comes to the additional vaccines that we are having, the advantage they have for us is that we are able to be more agile in how we use them because they are stable at fridge temperatures, which means we can go into more places in the community. And we know from modeling studies and from the data that we have about who's transmitting to whom that some of the key areas that we can use immunization to help stop transmission.
They're trying to stop transmission, but yet not that many people are getting sick, people. They're really not. They're not dying. More people die from fentanyl than they do from something that's not being fact-checked in the old folks' homes. As the flu has disappeared, and so is the common cold. But if you catch a cold, you're not healthy anymore. You're generally healthy.
In our communities, that gets us to the end of the pandemic sooner. So that's why we're talking about focusing vaccine on some of the essential workplaces where people cannot work from home, where we've had outbreaks in the past, and of course on first responders who have been out there on the front lines every day and are at risk because of their job of spreading it between each other and having to isolate and the administrative challenges that provides as well. So that's where we will be targeting this more flexible vaccine.
The more flexible vaccine goes to people that work at the post office and ambulance personnel and police and those kind. Well, everybody else gets the Pfizer.
Early on, and so there is a bit of choice. I would not suggest people wait. These vaccines are all good, and they.
How does she know that, people? How does she know that they're all good? Really? Anybody can write anything. I've been writing for years and years and years. I've written 2 million words, people, and if they don't want to fucking, they read your words and they take out what they want and they import it into their, ghostwriting, right? And then before you know it, you wrote something, you're listening to them, and you hear exactly what it was that you wrote. That was your idea. And they're egg snatchers. I've told you this. This is what they do. They make a living from stealing and lying and thieving. Like, seriously.
They all work, and we've seen.
She doesn't know that. She doesn't know that. She's not giving out the adverse effects. She hasn't. Anyone that's died has died from the so-called virus and not from reactions. But, we don't know that, people. We'll never know that. Not in British Columbia, Canada. Right? No fact checks. Remember that.
That across the world. So the vaccine that you have is the best vaccine right now. And
how does she know that? She can't guarantee that. She can't guarantee shit. She's already said it's experimental. Well, it's new. It's a different kind. They're monitoring it. They're data mining, right? They're watching it closely, right? They're thinking it's working okay. They're not too sure yet, though. They're gambling. They're gambling based on what's happening in the UK and Israel. She keeps popping out the name Israel. I wonder why. Like, seriously.
We'll be coming out with some more details. We're looking at the numbers and where we can have the best impact and some of the modeling about who's transmitting to who to help us look at.
She's always blaming the so-called victims. Right? Well, it's the carriers that are the problem. We have to target the carriers, and there's a whole lot of carriers in Surrey. We're going to go after the Punjabis. Yeah, okay. I already told you. What do you think's going to happen with the Punjabis, 350,000? You think they're all going to go running? Just take what's given to them? Right?
The limited number of doses that we have to begin with the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Follow-up, Katie?
Yes, but is it still accurate that the AstraZeneca vaccine will not be used for anyone over 65 because of the limited clinical research?
Yeah, it is approved for use by Health Canada, but our program here in BC is to focus it on the younger age groups because we have a very strong program.
That's because in another country, or the company itself says don't give it to people over 65, but you just basically heard her say that the federal government, Trudeau, like that's another one that needs to be fired, people. He says, his government says it's okay, even though the company itself says no, it's not. Well, she says, well, we can still do it if we want to, but
based on age, and we think that the timing for people in their 60s will be in the next few months, whereas we know that if we can target younger people,
if we can target predictive programming, target, oh God,
who have more social interactions, who would have to wait much longer for the Moderna Pfizer vaccines, that we can make a greater impact and protect more people in that sector. So our program.
And don't forget, they're mad dashing, building up their little cancer clinics, right? Going ching ching, ching ching, ching ching.
We'll be targeting at younger people, yes.
We have time for one more question. For everyone listening, Dr. Henry
I don't know what
Minister
this
Dix
question
will release a
is.
statement this afternoon with the
I've been
latest
listening to
information
this
on
off
cases,
and on.
hospitalizations, and outbreaks.
Wanting to throw up, literally wanting to throw up, people.
For updated province-wide restrictions, visit gov.bc.ca/COVID restrictions. And for information about the province's orders and pandemic supports, visit gov.bc.ca/.
There's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to have a whole lot of concussions without falling on their head.
Dr. Henry, you mentioned widespread easing of restrictions will happen when we see slower spread and ramped up vaccines, but our new case numbers have kind of stalled or plateaued for several weeks now, despite the vaccine getting into people's arms already. So is there a more specific benchmark you'll be watching for on that front? When should we expect daily caseloads to reflect the vaccine effort, aside from the success in long-term care homes we've already seen?
Yeah.
They're still dying in long-term care homes. They're still having outbreaks in long-term care homes. right? You know what I'm saying? But they've got success in care homes, even though, again, there are no fact checks, people. Just remember that. There are no fact checks in British Columbia, Canada, okay?
We've been, we think it's a lot, but yes, we've been targeting those high risk areas.
They're targeting, did you hear? They're targeting everybody, and they're getting off on it.
Where we're seeing outbreaks where we knew people were being hospitalized and dying. So, and we've seen the success of that. Doing that on a broader population basis is going to take more time. And that's why we're looking at how can we strategically target some of those other settings where we're...
And you see, the population will always pretty much stay because they can fudge the numbers as the people die. As quickly as they die, they import new immigrants, people, right? So if 10,000 people die from this situation, we're never going to hear about it, first of all, right? It will be buried, unless, of course, somebody wants to take the government to court to get, medical audits on pharmacare billing and just the whole 9 yards, and quite possibly have to exhume bodies to do independent autopsies in order to be able to get the full facts of what's going on here. The point is, 10,000 people can easily die for whatever reason. Simply turn off the water like an Auntie Joan, walk out the door, and just wait for nature to take its course. And then within 2 months, bring a band in of immigrants, so when they do their census counting, right, the population is still at the level that it was before those 10,000 suddenly fell off the planet of the earth, and nobody will pay attention. That's the thing. Nobody's going to pay attention, right?
We're seeing outbreaks, and that will help reduce the risk of transmission for all of us in the community. So it does build up over time, and the things that we watch are that rolling 7-day average, because we know that due to the way our lab system works, some days we have more cases than others reported. But it's much more important about when people when their onset of illness is, and that's the epidemiologic curve that we look at on a regular basis.
No, these are not illnesses, people, that they're marking down as COVID positive. They're the PCR test that's being over amplified to pick up fragments of particles that they can deem to be a virus, even though the person is asymptomatic and has no symptoms. Because that virus strand probably came back from back in the day when they were freaking kids. Right? They're just little particles that they're taking a magnifying glass and magnifying it stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until they see something that they want to see, people. If we had all these sick people walking around town, we would see them. We don't see them, people.
So we will be targeting vaccine to...
Do you see that? Targeting? That's all she says, targeting. She gets off on it.
See if we can affect that as well. It's a 7-day rolling average where the outbreaks are happening. Looking at our hospitalizations and our and people in ICU, that's a really important metric that helps us understand if we're...
All you have to do is think of Shimei's dead body hooked up to a machine for 9 fucking days to run embalming fluid through her pores so that she appeared to be alive, so that they can steal taxpayers' money for their fucking fucked up science experiment, okay? Basically. And then, God forbid, if they took her body and turned it into a bodysuit for some freaking shapeshifter. Who knows? Or maybe they put it on display for fucking art, okay? They definitely took out her organs and her teeth, though, people. And I'm telling you, it was a gynecologist who was her attending, a gynecologist who had his own operating team, people. He has his own operating team. What is a gynecologist looking after a dead body for, acting like as if it was alive? No, 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 no. He took out Shimei's eggs. That's what he did, people.
Immunizing the right.
And then they had to cover their tracks and made it look like she was alive until finally telltale signs of skin blistering and skin slippage and bloating and just the whole 9 yards, eyes sinking in, right? You know, and even at the day when it came, it was like, it's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get ugly. Fucking right, it gets ugly when a body starts to decompose, you stupid asshole. As if.
Right populations, for one thing.
So just remember, when she talks about people being in the ICU, just think of Shimei, okay? Really. That's all you have to think about to know that it's just a bunch of shenanigans going on in there. Because first of all, there are no family members witnessing what's happening to those bodies in the ICU in the British Columbia, Canada.
And the other thing that we...
Because nobody's allowed in, right?
Keep learning about this virus. We're learning about the variants. We're focusing a lot of our attention on case and contact tracing to make sure that...
More targeting, more gang stalking, put it for what it is.
That those variants don't take off. That is my biggest...
Yeah, that's my biggest worry, because if they take off, then we're going to come in with a new analog and we're going to inject you again because we're trying to turn you into fucking junkies. We just don't want to tell you that, though.
Just worry right now, and I've said that repeatedly. You know, we are in that strange...
I can't believe how dumb people are. Seriously, I can't believe how dumb society has become.
Period of trying to understand how many of these we're seeing and where we're going to, and trying to stop any sort of rapid increase. We've seen from the modeling that that's what's projected some places, but we believe we can affect that by the measures that we have in place. And we know that once we get into spring, the transmissibility overall will go down a little bit. So if things go well, if we're able to even hold our line or keep it, preferably decrease it, hit some of those hot spots, by the time we get to even early April, we may see some limited ability to increase interactions. But I really think that...
Dangling that carrot, providing false hope, right? All on suppositions that it might work, it should work, it's new, but it's effective and safe, that we know for sure.
That we're looking at the summer getting back to a lot more of the things that we need in terms of social interactions, in terms of the sports.
A whole lot of psychological abuse, people. These people are psychologically abusive, bottom line.
And theater.
Could you imagine going to bed with that?
And other things that we are missing in our lives.
Yeah, what are you missing in your life outside of not having a soul? Okay, so we're just going to finish it on this. We don't want to think about this binary individual having sex.
Oh, hi. Thank you for taking my question.
Waiting for the doctor to come in with a stash of eggs.
Dr. Henry, I guess what I'm wondering, and you did lay out in a great deal of detail the rationale for the 4-month time period, but I'm hoping you can react to the criticism that you might have heard from Canada's Chief Science Advisor, likening the extension to basically a population experiment in the absence of clinical data. And I know Dr. Fauci in the States has also recommended against extending that time period. Can you just respond, I guess, specifically?
Everybody's an expert, but nobody's a doctor with patients. You notice that? And the doctors that do have patients run them out of clinics and tell them to go take them to court.
Lead to those criticisms.
And I'll start with Dr. Fauci, who I think you have to read the entirety of what he said. And it was that he did not recommend the extension of doses in the United States because he felt they had sufficient vaccine that they could use that same time frame. Which
That was an easy playoff, don't you think?
is fine. And he also went on to talk about the fact that he had regular meetings with the UK.
She keeps bringing up the UK and Israel. Israel.
The UK is using a similar time frame to what we are, and they have
Notice how she's I'm surprised she's not putting up her middle finger.
extended the interval between first and second doses and have from the
But this is Mother Queen Mary, right? Or Saint Mary, Mother Mary, right? The Saint Bonnie.
very beginning. And part of the data that we use to understand the real world effectiveness.
The real world. She's not in a position to talk about 6 billion people, okay?
Of the vaccine came from the UK and came from the experience that they're having there, that a single dose is very protective. And Dr. Fauci.
But again, you can't go on to any website out there, as far as I know, and find out from independent sources, mothers, brothers, sisters, sons, husbands, wives, cousins, uncles, aunts, right? You know what I'm saying? Daughters, of reporting adverse effects that's happening to their loved ones, or even having ethical medical practitioners reporting those adverse effects, with many of them resulting in death within 24 hours, up to 5 days after the fact of receiving these mRNA analogs that are being on the manufacturing. Cheap. Little birdie said cheap. It's real cheap. Just keep on pumping out those analogs. Cheap. We got away with it with the fentanyl. Cheap. In the community, they don't say shit about it, so they're not cheap. Just keep out pumping out those analogs because nobody's going to say shit. Cheap. Because it's cheap, and we can afford to do it because we're using taxpayers' dollars to pay for it. Cheap.
She went on to say that each of those approaches is correct and is right and works for them.
And it works for them. Even though they're just data mining and monitoring and hiding statistics and denying people access the right to see how many other people are filing adverse effects and not having a chance to see what those effects are.
And we are in a position where we are looking at the data from the UK, but we're also in a position that's quite different from the US in terms of our vaccine availability in the short term. And we are at a position where we still have ongoing transmission in our communities in quite a serious way.
But yet there's really not that many sick people walking around, people. They got a little fragment of something in their fucking body that's been innate for like who knows how long, right? It's so bogus. It's just bogus.
Particularly here, Ontario, a number of communities across the country. So this makes sense for us, knowing that it is a critical time right now with the limited amount of vaccine.
And don't forget, you don't get to choose which one you want. People think they're going to get that choice. But no, you get what they give you when they target you. Never mind when they fucking give it to you. It's what you get what they target you with. Because they're data mining. And they're picking and choosing, like cherry picking, right?
That we have in the coming weeks to.
Again, I'm pretty sure there's back deals going on, right, with big money buying immunity for certain groups out here that just won't take anything because they're going to want to have that placebo comparison. And they're going to want to live without too many mishaps along the way, because they've got their shares and their dividends in those cancer clinics, right? They're shareholders, they're investors, right? So why the fuck would they want to get sick and be a patient to something that they make money off of? They don't.
To be able to provide that protection that is safe and long-lasting for in the short term, so for several...
You heard that. That's safe and long-lasting, oops, let me catch myself, in the short term for at least a little while. As the variants are raging on and she's all worried about them.
months to everybody here. And that is why we made the decision that we did. You
get 2 months of protection, people, assuming that what she's saying is true, because based on what she's saying, it's coming from everywhere else that is applicable to the whole fucking world. As if.
It is a little bit unfortunate that the National Science Advisor, who, obviously was not involved in some of these discussions and decisions.
They have to have their controlled opposition to make it look like there was a fight involved with the debate. There is no debate. You're being ordered and you're being targeted, you're being gang stalked, and you're going to be forced into something that you don't want. And if you don't fucking take the force enforcement, there's going to be dire, dire consequences. Okay? And if you do take the enforcement, there can still be dire, dire, dire consequences that will be swept under the rug and hidden away like the government's dirty secret.
Decision making, and perhaps didn't understand the context that this decision was made in. So it is absolutely our intent to continue to do the studies that we are doing.
Do the studies. She admits it's a study. It's an experiment. Right there. You heard it from the horse's mouth.
And I mentioned this from the BC CDC, the vaccine effectiveness, to make sure that we are monitoring carefully.
We're going to continue to do our studies with the CDC to ensure that we're monitoring the effectiveness. Studies.
For making sure the vaccine is working and that level of protection continues in our communities, and help us understand the level of protection that we achieve when we...
to help us understand, because we're doing a study. We're doing an experiment. We're data collecting. We're data mining.
More people more quickly. So that's how we made the basis of our decision. I will also say the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, which is an independent body, So
she's got all these big gurus backing her up, so somehow that makes it right? Birds of a feather flock together. Right? Go into a crack shack. You're not going to get people in there freaking mixing crack with heroin. No, you got the crackheads in the crack shack over there, and you got the heroines in that shack, the heroin addicts in that shack. Very seldom can you merge the two, right, together successfully. Okay? Trust me, I had that little house. I know what the fuck goes on in those kind of places. And believe it or not, those two groups, they actually got along when I had that little house.
Looks at immunization programs routinely.
Because they knew my intentions were good, people.
Be coming out with a statement shortly.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
I do. I guess I'm maybe a two-parter, but I'm just wondering about in yesterday's presentation. As I understood it,
anyway.
You sort of referenced the